Oops. Oops, there we go. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hello. This is fun. I'm glad we're finally here wrapping up our rune study group. This is awesome. So I'm Lisa Papez. This is the beautiful, this way.
I'm over here now.
Yeah.
I need to be on the other side.
Oh, you're on the other side. Oh, I forgot. Hold on. There we go. Now that way. Michelle of Boho Tarot. Welcome.
Hello.
We'll give it a few minutes for people to show up, but yeah, we're just gonna hang out and talk rune study stuff.
Yes.
Yay.
Wrap up our rune studies. Well, not really wrap up because it's like it's like tarot, right? It's gonna be an ongoing thing.
Yep, it's gonna be always.
Yeah.
Always.
Which is so fun.
Yeah, it's been quite a deep dive. I know we've talked about it before, but I've been really surprised by, well, I shouldn't say, I guess, no, I was surprised. I was definitely surprised by like how big it felt once we started to get into it. It was like almost instant overwhelm in a way.
It really was, which is funny because, you know, there's what, 24 runes? My nose always itches when we get on camera.
Yeah, me too. That's the thing.
Yeah, it felt like, because there's 78 cards in the tarot, right? You think that would be overwhelming, but no, the little 24 little runes, those were, I think because they're so big, they're like really big energy, but then it's really interesting how they also kind of do the mundane as well, which was kind of interesting.
I wonder if we'd feel the same about tarot if tarot was like 30 major arcana cards and that's it. It might feel equally big because you're trying to figure out the big energies and then also those smaller day-to-day energies and like figure out when it's which. Like there's an intuitive component of like you pull a rune and it's like, okay, is this like my whole life is about to fall apart because I've drawn Hagalaz, or like does it mean like it's just gonna rain later? Like
yeah,
what is going on? Hi, Corey.
Hi, Corey. Hi, Han. Hey, Pixie.
Hi, guys. Cillian 369. Yeah, runes also give you less to go with. Yeah, most tarot cards, you have a lot of images to give you clues as to the meaning, while the runes, you have to remember each one and all the meanings for each. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I think that's totally a thing. Hi, Erica.
Yeah, I think the because I'm a visual person, so the lack of pictures was actually, I think, the biggest struggle for me to kind of get over. There's no pictures, it's just the symbol. And I think I know we're going to talk about it in a little bit, but like Nina's deck was actually kind of hugely helpful for bridging the gap.
Absolutely. I would say like if anybody asked me like tips for just getting started with the runes, I think if you were coming from a tarot background, the very first thing I'd say is get a deck that has imagery so that you can like have something imagery wise to associate with the tarot or with the runes, because I'm so used to leaning into imagery. And even with like pip cards, there's still arrangement of pips. There's still other things to look at. And I found myself like, I don't know about you, but when people in the discussion group were talking about like what the rune shape looked like or reminded them of, that's where I started to connect better, because it's like, oh, okay, this is like a flag, or this is like a cup or whatever. It just gave me something else to like chew on.
Yeah. That was, I think, definitely, and I see Corey says like learning a new language, because it like was, right? It actually, from what I remember from the very first initial kind of dive into the history, it is a language. And so it's totally learning another language, whereas tarot is based on our pre-existing language.
Yep.
So
it's super true.
And for me, the picture is just, you know, it makes it easier to kind of make that connection, whereas just staring at the little symbols, I'm like, I don't know what this means, and it's in all kinds of cockeyed ways, and I'm like, oh my goodness, what does that mean?
I don't understand. I know. And then there's the whole layer of like working with a three-dimensional object, which is interesting because then there's all these other pieces, right? And I've been trying to figure out, that's one of the things I think that near the end of like sort of the more dedicated study, I've been trying to figure out, okay, like, do I peek if I do a casting and stuff's upside down, do I look at that and then factor that in, or do I? And to me, I've just been feeling like it's easier for me to focus on what's face up and what's clustered and things like that. There are so many layers to a casting system. I said that weird, but there's so many layers to a casting system. It's like I don't know, what it's touching, what it's near. And you can really get, I guess, I kind of want to say bogged down, but it's true. You can kind of get bogged down in all the different layers of things, you know?
Yeah. I think I totally get that. I didn't even really like dive that deep into all the different, I guess, configurations. Like I was really still kind of, I feel like I'm still like in the baby mode, right? I'm still just, is it face up? Is it face down? Like, is it, and if I cast on a card, is it on the card or is it on the table?
Yes. I love this. Kristen says, runes are so difficult for me. Okay, this means birch. Blank stare. I've totally had that experience.
Yeah.
Yes. Acilian says, I peek at significant face down runes, but most of the time I don't look. Yeah. I think I'm glad that we did it the way that we did it, because we kind of started with just like kind of getting a broad overview of the runes. And then we started actually working at like spreads versus casting. And I feel like there was an opportunity to kind of play with both, both methods. Have you played with both? And do you have a preference between spreads and casting at this stage, would you say?
I think at this stage, I have a preference for casting, because the actual like shaking the runes up and like doing the thing, like it's just fun, right?
Yes.
It's like I haven't played too much with the spreads, because I'm still kind of like I'm still like in the 5-year-old phase where I'm like, I want to touch them and I want to shake them up, and which is funny because I still only have one rune set.
I'm amazed.
So, I know, me too.
I have one set. I have like 4 now.
My tarot collection.
Yeah. Although I think with runes, once you get a set or two that you, I say or two to justify myself, but once you have a set that you're like kind of bonded to, it's easy to start just ignoring the rest. Yeah. Like I have my set that I started with, which I never fully connected with. I have my set of pine runes that I adore with every part of my heart and soul, because they smell as well as like touch and feel and all that stuff. And then those dang Forge of the Phoenix runes, which are everything. And I kind of want a witch's rune set from her now, but I'm trying to hold off. Yeah. But witch's runes, funny enough, those were way easier for me to learn because there's only 13, and I don't know if you've played with those at all, but witch's runes are like, they're just simple. There's, I guess I should say simpler. They still encompass a lot, but I don't know. They feel more intuitive, maybe because they're more picture based in a way than.
Yeah, I would agree. They are. I mean, I guess I actually played with witch's runes like a couple like decades ago. Let's show my age here, right? Like a long time ago in my very first kind of witchy studies. That would really have been, I guess, my real first introduction to this sort of casting type of thing. But it was specific to the group that I was in. So it wasn't like a just normal witch's rune set. It was very specific to that group that I was in.
Gotcha.
But I like that there's more in this. I feel like yeah, I'm 5. And I just think it's fun to like shake them up, or sometimes I just pull one out. I actually found myself doing that more than actually like really sitting down. I guess it's still intentional, but it's like more of a mindful thing. So like I'd be sitting down or just sitting at my desk, and I'd just kind of be playing with them and just kind of pull out a rune, and then I had my little book that I would kind of, if I had the time, look it up, or sometimes I just look at it and go, oh, do I remember which one that one is? So it's kind of like a memory game.
Like a flashcard thing almost. Yeah. Like, yeah, that's a great thing.
It's just fun too. I mean, like, just to kind of be able to play with them. And I think maybe that's why I don't have another set, because yeah, I've kind of developed like I do a tarot. I mean, I have tarot decks that I'm like super partial to, and they're my favorites, and but I think that's kind of where I'm at with my rune set too, is it's just like, because it sits out here and I can just like get in the bag and kind of just pull one out and go look at it and go, can I remember which one this is, and things like that. So
what does it mean and stuff. I think daily rune draws are really helpful. And I think actually one of the things that helped me a lot going into our study thing is that I had spent about a year doing a daily rune draw as part of my practice. So I still do that not every single week, but like regularly I'll still do a rune draw. And sometimes I'll pull, because I always do like a 2 or 3 card daily tarot draw. So sometimes I'll pull like a rune for every tarot card, and I'll read the tarot and rune as a combination. So if I have 3 tarot cards, I'd have 3 tarot rune combinations. I'm doing that this week, working with not Norse runes, but with Ted Andrews' Animal Speak runes. Same kind of thing. I like doing that. I also like, I have as part of my spiritual practice working with my matron deity, I have a set of shell runes, and I draw 1 a week as part of my message working with her. So I have that I'm doing. So I feel like one of the things that's come out of this is that I'm more likely to, I guess, integrate runes into the other things that I'm doing. I don't see myself ever being like, today I'm going to sit down and just rune cast. I don't know that that's really where I'm headed with this. I just really like integrating it into other things. Yeah, I think
I kind of feel the same way, but then I feel like I do that with everything I do.
Yeah.
It's not really specific to just runes, like, because I like to integrate, you know, tarot and oracle, and then like even like some of the more witchier things, and like my journaling and things like that. For me, it's all like integrated into one, and I'm kind of at the point now where I feel comfortable enough with the runes, I think, to start really integrating them into, as I normally would anything, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of excited, like, to maybe integrate more of that into just my practice overall next year.
Yeah, I love that. And I've also started, the other thing I've been doing for a long time in my client readings, I would pull, I have been doing this for a long time, but I'll pull a making magic card. It just helps set the intention for the reading, but I'll do it very intentionally. Like I'll pick one kind of thing, or sometimes I'll do a blind draw. Most of the times I pick one based on the question and the querent and what's going on. But what I've started doing lately is I should have brought them to show, but I have the Cosmic Whispers rune cards. They're like really thick, like, I don't know, 800 GSM, something ridiculous. They're like wood things. So I will shuffle those, concentrating on my querent and their question, and then I will fan them on my reading table, and I will intuitively draw one as I'm setting up the space for them. And I've been finding that's been really powerful. Like I'll be reading their spread, and I'll have the rune over to the side, and I'll talk about it in the beginning, and then I'll weave it into their reading. Like it'll be really interesting to see how it ends up tying in. And sometimes it speaks to kind of overall themes, or like, so that's been really cool too. And I think the just repetition of drawing them for that, or drawing them for myself, or blending them with tarot, some of the meanings are actually starting to like gel.
Right.
I mean, I still will, if I pull it for a client before the reading, I'll still go to one of my books and I'll like refresh myself and make sure, see what kind of intuitively pops out from a meaning in a book or whatever. But more and more I'm having to do that less and less. I said that weird, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm not relying on
I totally get that.
Yeah, that's been really cool. I don't know, it's been fun to kind of get creative with it. But I think overall, like, has playing with the runes, do you think, has it whet your appetite for to maybe someday want to dip your toes into like other kinds of casting systems? Or has it done the opposite and you're like, well, this is good, but I don't know that I'm going to do more of it?
I have an interest, I think, in working with OMs. So those are the little, like, that I feel like, but right now I can't.
It's too much, right?
My brain, it can't hold all that. But I feel like this was kind of like, you know, getting the palette ready for moving into that. Like I said, I haven't done any sort of casting since way back in the day. And but I kind of would like to go more, try that at some point, just to I have a lot of, I don't know, Celtic influences. I really like the whole and what's the word I'm looking for? I'm totally blanking this morning, but a lot of the things that I really love in my practice, I have noticed over the last year, have a very Celtic flair to them. And so that's what led me to think maybe I should look into OMs.
Yeah, OMs is really an exciting system to me. I think what attracts me to that as a system to dive into someday is I really love the idea that each one is associated with a different wood. And I don't know if you know of Jess over at Stellar Tarot, but she has been collecting wood, each wood to match up with, and crafting her own set. And there's something about that that feels really powerful, like bonding
Mhm.
with like the tree and like collecting the wood mindfully and like carving your or burning in your, I mean, it's very inspiring. And I'm just like, that would be a really cool thing to do and to like connect with, especially because I find that like the energy of my wooden runes, I don't know if I've probably shown you these before, but they're giant. They're
Mhm.
kind of big, right? Like they're like as big, yeah, they're big. But like these, there's something about this being wood and being natural that I just love. These ones stay at home though because I'm always worried I'm gonna like lose any of them. I keep this one though. I keep these little like Forge of the Phoenix runes. I keep these on me all the time. Like these travel with me to work. They're in my bag.
Mhm.
They're little, so they don't take
Yeah.
up space, and I can just kind of keep them handy. But the idea of like, I don't know, of the OM system is fascinating. But there's no way I'm going to be studying it for like a long time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
many things on my to study list right now.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like I need to get more comfortable with this, and then, you know, but eventually, yes, I would like to move into maybe that side of things. Again, maybe find like a deck to help me bridge the gap because that's
Exactly. Kristen asked if I ever use that pretty rune card set with the gold writing. Yeah, that's the one I was describing that I now integrate into my client readings. So I do a blind draw from that. It's beautiful. It looks good on the table. It's not super distracting because it's not like colorful. So it's just kind of there on the table. It looks really good that way. So that's how I'm using those, and I love using them that way. That's like the perfect way to use those. They go really good with my making magic cards, which are also black and gold.
Mhm.
So it works. Yeah, Asilian says it did take me several years to feel comfortable. I started using them as an alphabet for writing and then added the meanings from there. I actually really like that idea. I like the idea of like writing, like learning the alphabet and being able to like, I don't know, write spell work that way or write petitions that way. Are there enough vowels? I'm just kind of thinking now. There's U and A. Is there an E? No, yeah, there is, right? Isn't AWAS?
I think so. Yeah.
I'd have to actually sit down and look at like a comparison. I wonder how effectively.
I have a printout because I wanted to do that too. And that was kind of in the back of my mind, one of my reasons for wanting to kind of dive into the runes because, you know, we all know how much I love to write and journal and all that. And I'm like, how cool would it be to be able to have a journal that's written in runes? And so that was kind of where it, in the back of my mind, kind of started for me. That was like, oh, that would be really cool. But then I can also, you know, integrate them into, you know, divination and stuff like that. So,
Yeah, totally.
but again, it is learning a whole nother alphabet or a whole nother language. So,
Yeah, it is like that.
yeah.
I mean, it's based on an alphabet. Of course, it should be,
Right.
you should be able to like do it, right? Like, it's just, I haven't really tried it, but I think it'd be really cool to do. So yeah, that'd be fun. And OM's similar is that it's also an alphabet, right? If I understand correctly. I think
I
it's
believe
also an
so.
alphabet.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
But I think other than OMs, I don't know that I'd want to learn a whole new casting system at this point. I'm like, I'd have to be real motivated to want to do this again, I feel like. And it's interesting because as much as I'm a very tactile person, I think it's like what you said, I'm also a super visual person. So there's that too.
The only other thing I could see myself doing, which I think Acilium mentioned, was charms, because that's very picture based.
That's
And
visual though.
I think that would be fun. I haven't gotten into that yet just because I know me and I would end up having this
just collecting loads of things.
Which would be totally fun, but like, right, I can only do so much at once. So, but I can definitely see doing that because it's more picture based, and that's, you know, I'm a visual person, so that works well for me.
Yeah, I have a charm casting set that is tarot based. So it's got a charm for each major arcana card. There's a dice. There's court card, like little chess pieces for all the courts. So it's basically an entire tarot deck in a charm set, which is super fun. And I have used it a few times, but it hasn't yet been something that I feel like is like a go-to or that I would like. I've used them occasionally, like over tarot readings and things like that. But yeah, I've seen some really fun charm sets that people put together. Like obviously Kelly Fitzgerald's put together some cool charm sets. And Tara of Kittens, Weights, and Tarot has a really adorable charm set. Have you ever seen it? She has like all these cute little like almost toy, like really bright and colorful kind of charms.
I think so. I think I've seen pictures of it.
Oh my God, it's so cute. Yeah. So there's that. But yeah, I'd want a big bowl of them or something. It'd be bad. It'd be bad.
I think that would be fun, but I think that would be a rabbit hole I could get lost in.
Right? I know, totally. It says, I completely agree. Charms are very visual. I've been collecting charms for years, and I always have an eye out for new ones all the time. Yeah, I mean, it'd be fun because little tiny things. And I got into a phase where I was considering playing with story dice in divination. Have you seen those?
Yeah, those are pretty cool.
Yeah, so I played with those a little bit, but I was like, no, so I don't know. It's kind of fun. I'm always looking for something new to play with, divination-wise. Play with all the things.
I like to play with them too, but like it's funny because Kristen says I'm gonna stick with tarot. I'm a one-trick pony. Like there's a part of me that feels that too, but that could just be because like I love my cards. And they're like, but that's where my comfort zone lies. And it's good to push yourself outside your comfort zone, right? That's where we live and just trying to broaden the horizon. That's what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. I think what I like is being able to, I'm a big like geek about layering meanings of things. So I think that's what I enjoy, is that you can have like cards on the table and you can layer runes. I don't know that I could see a system like runes ever replacing. I think that's why I didn't get as into the bigger castings and spreads. I did them and I enjoyed the exercise of it, but I don't see myself, like I said, sitting down and doing a full cast as like in replacement of a tarot reading, because I'm so bonded to the system of tarot and like so comfortable with it. So there's that for sure.
Yeah. I love the idea of being able to layer it over the top of it.
Yeah.
Which is really cool.
Especially if you like think about that ahead of time, and like if you lay out like a 4-card tarot spread in like a directional way where you've got like a north, south, east, west or whatever, or like above, below kind of thing, and then you cast on something like that where the tarot cards are holding those positions, and then you can see how it layers with the position and with the card. I geek out on that stuff. I think that's super fun. I haven't done a ton of it, but I have enjoyed playing with it for sure.
Yeah, I haven't done like I still feel like I'm kind of in that baby mode, right? Still really getting familiar with the runes and the symbols and the meanings. And I feel like as maybe we move into the next year, maybe I can kind of start incorporating that in more, because I think like tarot is a tactile experience too. And then you have runes, which is also a tactile experience, but it's a different kind of experience. And I think it'd be really kind of cool to mix those all together and, have this really kind of integrated reading would be really fun. But I could see where you could, because the runes have that really rich depth to them, where you could really kind of get lost in the weeds of it. And that's sometimes where I find myself, is even with just like 1 or 2 of them on the table, I'm like, I could get so lost just in these 1 or 2, like, and then you add tarot to that, and there's a little bit of me that's a little intimidated by that, just to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think it's kind of like you can say, oh, I like, this is a dumb example, but it's what's in my head. Like, I like water. Okay, well, water is like, there's rain, there's running water, there's rivers, there's streams, there's oceans. Like, the level of depth you can explore in a single rune is completely variable. So you can like go in this deep, you can go in this deep, you can go in this deep. And so when you say like lost in the weeds, totally, because, and I think this is where I struggle the most with runes versus tarot. With runes, I feel like you have to kind of intuitively find the right depth for whatever your question is or whatever your reading is. Whereas with tarot, we get a little help because the major arcana tells us there's depth, right? Versus the minor arcana. We have like a system that lets us kind of know where the depth is if we want to explore that. There's still an intuitive layer, but like with the runes, you're kind of all on your own. It's like, okay, are you on the high diving board right now? Or are you on the little diving board right now? And you have to figure that out. And that's this kind of way where I feel like in sort of runes, it's like walking in blindfolded. Like you're kind of, really have to feel your way through the reading in a way that's very different than with tarot.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I feel like it takes longer. And I was trying to figure out, is that just because the depth of the rune, or is it just because I know tarot so well? Like, in 20 years, am I going to feel the same way about runes? Like, I'm going to be like, throw down runes, and I'm going to be like, there it is, and we're good to go. And, like I can do
I don't know, because like I said, I was doing daily rune draws for like a year before we did our study. And I it's all the same still. I haven't really felt it shift. Anne asks us if we have any thoughts about relating each rune with a particular tarot card. I have feelings about this. Do you have feelings about this?
Kind of. Go first, though.
Okay. So when we first started talking about all this and like starting off, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. Like we can totally match up the runes to specific major or minor or both arcana cards. And I totally don't feel that way anymore. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's just too hard to pigeonhole them that way. That's where I was at. Because originally I was like, oh yeah, this rune's like the Chariot card or this rune's like the Sun card. And you can see those like layers, I feel like. But in practice, they don't feel at all the same. Because it's like, you'd have to assign like 6 cards to each rune for it to start to make sense, it feels like. You know what I mean? Like more than one for sure. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's totally how I feel. Because like originally I was like, what is it? Thurisas, that's like Thor's card. I'm like, oh, that's the tower. Well, no, that's just one little aspect of that card. So
yes.
Yeah, I feel like you probably could, and I think it would be a fun exercise at some point. So like, how many different cards from the tarot could you assign to each one? Yeah. But I still think even if you used all 78 cards, I still think you would find holes where you're like, but this element is missing in this particular rune.
Yes.
So I feel like in a way they're almost more encompassing than the tarot, but I think you can definitely find tarot associations because those are a lot of times they're, you know, just the archetypes, the universal archetypes. So we can really find those in any sort of divination system like this, I think. But I think, like, yeah, Anne says it might make it easier. I think in the beginning, I did associate certain ones with tarot, and I think that did make it easier because I could kind of make that connection in my mind. Yeah. And then that kind of gave me a base for where to start. And then I can, you know, as I've been working with them, as I've been studying with them, it's been kind of allowed to blossom from there. So I think I just instinctually or intuitively did that in the back of my mind. Like this card is this, this card is this, but it was just the starting point.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it kind of helps as a jumping off point, but beyond that, yeah. And Acilian makes a good point, too, and says, I think the danger in matching runes to tarot is you stop thinking of them as their own symbols and just read them as the associated tarot, so you miss a lot of the meaning of the rune. And I will definitely say I did this. Like, when I was doing my daily draws, again, before we studied, Hagalaz to me was the tower card in my head. Like, it's like, okay, it's the storm, it's like all the upheaval, it's this, it's that. But it's so much more. And I missed out on that so much more by boxing it into being just like the tower energy. And so that's the one I always think of. But so, yeah, I think it's like one of those things where it's helpful. I think it's helpful as an exercise of learning any system to make associations. I think that's helpful to kind of form correspondences, whether it's elemental or whatever, to get to know something. But then at a certain point, you want to step away from it or it becomes a crutch and you miss out on all that depth. Yeah. You know? Yeah.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think there's some definite overlap, but it's just really scratching the surface of it. But for me, it just, you know, it helped with the remembering, right? It helped with
exactly.
In kind of the same way that I learned tarot was actually not RWS. It was numerological and elemental, which is why that association in the back of my head is there, but it's still the same kind of idea of I associate it with this, and then that provides my base, and I can expand from there as I learn and grow and things like that.
Yeah, and we were talking about that the other day because like I learned similarly is I learned a single association to each card first and then built from there. And I think that's a really valid way to learn a new system, and it can help help keep it from feeling too overwhelming, especially with a system like the runes where it's such a gigantic rabbit hole. Pixie says, I wanted to do this study because I'm from Sweden and wanted to connect more to my culture and background. So I was jumping off as a language first, then the symbolic meanings as a second base for me. And says, I think it was also easier for me because I was able to read the rune stones that are only 5 minutes from my home. Oh, that's amazing.
Cool. That's very cool.
I love that. Yeah.
I found keywords actually super helpful. And I don't know if that's like, just as a learning, and in the in one of the books that I've been using, there is like a I should have marked it, but there's not only a key word, but there's like a little key phrase. And that for me was hugely helpful because it just gave me kind of a baseline.
Yeah.
That's my jumping off point. And then how can I, based on, because it's all contextual, right? It's based on whatever's going on. Why are you pulling runes in the first place or casting runes in the first place? It's, similar to tarot. It depends on where you're coming from, basically.
I totally agree. Do you remember which book had the key phrase in it?
Yeah, it's Taking Up the Runes. So
that's what I still want to get. Oh, here, let me make you bigger. Hold on. Yeah.
So it's this one here, and if you look, I'm in the way, but there is, focus camera. Can you see? It's right here. So each one has not only the meaning, which is above the little illustration, but it has the little key phrase too. And I actually found those to be really helpful. They're a little bit poetic, which I think made them stick in my mind more.
I love that actually, and especially because when you start to dig into like the poetic Edda, I'm going to say it wrong, but there's that too. There's like
the poetic Edda.
Yeah, and I think my experience with that, I actually had that from, I'm going to make myself big again so I can show. This is the book that had the biggest impact on me. And I think it's because it's so storybook and it just captured my imagination. I found this to be such a great book. And this is out of print. This is the Brian Froud Runes of Elfland, which I've talked about before. And Dawn introduced me to, because you got it first, Dawn, and then was like, this is out of print. But
it's so cool.
It is so beautiful and cool. And what's neat about this one is that you get this, like, for every single rune, there's this beautiful big like illustration that actually lines up. There's like a charm, which is like a little poem about the rune. And then there's the telling, which is basically a story. And then at the end of the story, there's the gift, which is more like, I'd say, like a summary of like what the rune sort of means. And I find myself, like, when I'm doing my rune draws for client readings, I'll regularly read the section about the rune in this first and just kind of see which lessons or messages jump out at me. This was my favorite discovery, I think, even above rune sets. I think this was my favorite thing that I brought in through this whole process, because it's just so unique and special. I don't know, but that really helped because it makes them feel more three-dimensional, more alive. Well, that and reading that and Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology, which so much. And this was such an enjoyable read and took me down this whole Neil Gaiman rabbit hole. I freaking love his writing style. But this book was hugely helpful too, because once you kind of know that, once you've read the stories, some of the rune meanings start to make so much more sense.
Yeah, I found that too. I read that one before we started the rune studies. So kind of like in preparation for. And it really helped because the way that Neil Gaiman writes it, it's a more modern language, right? So it's an easier read than some of the other Norse mythology books that I've read, and his writing style is much more approachable.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's more like reading. It felt like I was reading a book of short stories, and there was a lot of personality in the characters, the way he's written them, that show up in the myths. I just found it very like emotive and like clear and easy to follow. I was really worried when I bought this book. I was scared because anything to do with like history and mythology, if it's not written in a style like this, I just don't absorb it. It needs to feel like a fairy tale or a story for me to like be able to absorb well. I don't know what that's about, but I struggle with more dry material.
Like academic material.
Yeah, academic's probably a better way to put it. Not necessarily dry, but like, academic for sure. And it depends. If the subject itself super fascinating, then I can do it. But it has to really grab me from the beginning. And that this got me over the hump for sure, because I was scared to dive into Norse myth. Not gonna lie, I was scared.
It's really more of a story, the way that he writes it. And I've heard the audiobook is amazing because he reads it like. Neil Gaiman actually reads it, and I've heard it's amazing, but I don't have it. So.
I can't do audiobooks because I like to read at night and I will fall asleep and lose my place because it'll just keep playing. I can't, but I love the idea. I think it'd be great. But and if I'm doing something while I'm listening to a book, I'm either not paying attention to what I'm doing or I'm not absorbing the book. So like
I'm the same way. I can't do the audiobook thing. And I'm old school. I want a real book.
to
like,
hold, right?
I have several books that I have them on Kindle and in paperback because like Kindle's real great for like quick, easy reference. And then but I want to be able to hold it. And sometimes it is easier to go through the paperback than it is the Kindle, but
I'm kind of the opposite. Actually, for reference, I want physical books so that I could highlight it or mark it up or bookmark it or I don't know. And I know you can do all of that digitally, but like I love reading fiction on my Kindle because it's so lightweight and convenient. But like anything nonfiction, I have to have a physical copy.
I'm the same way. Most of what's on my Kindle is fiction. The nonfiction books that I have, and I have a couple of Rune books. The ones that I actually go back to, I always end up in paperback too.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can flip through it. So
beloved, then I want like a hardbound. Like even a fiction book, if I really love the story, I want like a hardbound nice copy to feel and touch and smell and all the things. That's got to be something we all have in common. I feel like if we're into tarot or oracle cards, we probably all really like tangible things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the tactile experience. I want to be able to hold it and feel it and
take it all in. Totally.
Yeah. That, and I think Nina's book was like hugely helpful.
Nina's book is so good.
Her deck too was like I think I mentioned earlier, the being able to bridge the gap between the visual, the cards, and I love the way that she has the imagery depicted in the book where it does give you a visual idea of what is going on.
Yeah, totally. I think she was really smart with the illustrations, and I like that this is Nina's cards. Just so you know what we're talking about, this is called Rune Spirals. And there's a deck, and then there's an accompanying guidebook. Now she's got these extra runes, which I haven't dove into like at all, actually. I don't know if you've looked at those. What are those? The younger Futhark ones? I haven't looked at those at all.
I haven't. She has the let me see. I got the book here. The 9 runes of the Jotnar. I'm probably totally mispronouncing that.
Yeah, she's got those in there. These were so helpful, and
really were.
Just the picture she chose, I feel like, really captured the meaning of the card. You can tell she really researched this deck very, very well. Oh, that's another one of the other ones. Yeah, I've got them all mixed up right now, but I think this was such a great bridge from tarot to runes for me. Yeah, I love it so much.
Same, and I love her illustrations and her her guidebook is very well written, but it's really easy to digest. So and it's like she has great keywords. She also has the reverse keywords in here. And then I like that she tied everything into what was on the cards.
Yes.
Which was hugely helpful. And not every guidebook does that. Sometimes they don't even make reference of what you're looking at.
That bugs me so much.
It bugs me too.
Explain your artistic choices.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. The book that comes with this is what Dawn's talking about. What's neat is that what I liked about it is that on the first page you get like sort of a quick summary. So you have the image, you have keywords, reverse keywords, but then on this side she kind of like often ties in the mythos, which was this was actually what whet my appetite to want to get Neil Gaiman's book, because she refers to what happened in the stories that are associated with the various runes, and that piece I freaking loved. Okay, Kristen says Jotnar.
Oh, yeah. J pronounced like a Y. Yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, but this book, I would say just for these are pretty much the only 2 I use now. I read this one for the stories. I go to this one if I need quick like reference. And then my personal one that I created that has all the like keywords and stuff that I associate personally with each rune. Those are like, that's it for resources. That's all I need. I worked with a couple of other books during. I really do want to pick up Taking Up the Runes at some point because that just looks so comprehensive and good.
It really is. And the best part about this is like, So the whole front end of the book is the runes, right? And but it goes into, there's ritual, and it goes deep into each rune. And in the back, there's like a whole, basically, I call it like a rune grimoire. So there is meditations, and there is charms, and there's songs, there's all kinds of things. It's like working the runes into your magical practice, which is basically what it says, complete guide to using runes in spells, rituals, divination, and magic.
Yeah, like I think
this is everything I do in one.
Yeah, it's very comprehensive. I think if I was just starting out, like if I was coming into this just discovering our videos or just discovering the study group, I think that's the first book I would grab, because it feels the most like it has everything in it that you need. Have you found, because I definitely found this in other books that I was working with, but have you found any issues where like the way that it describes the meaning of the rune conflicts with other resources you had in a significant way, or in like a little way, or at all?
I think that for the most part, the majority of the runes tracked across all my resources, there would be little differences. I didn't find any huge, like, totally different meanings, right? They were just kind of variations on it. The other thing I like about Taking Up the Runes is she actually includes interpretations from several different resources.
She does?
Yeah, so it's not just her initial. So she'll talk about, let's see if I can find one. In each section, it has the rune. There is the ancient meaning, which is really cool, and then the modern meaning, which is really cool. And then she goes into interpreting and using it, and then she'll talk about different throughout, and it's really like not sectioned off. It's just written throughout all of the writings on it. But she'll incorporate, this particular author states this about the runes, and so she incorporates a lot of that in there. So I felt like in reading this one book, I was actually reading like several different references all in one. And she does note when there's like differences in spelling. That was the biggest thing that I found that was the biggest trip up, and especially when I was trying to get the resources together in the beginning.
Yeah, you poor thing. You're like trying to do the thumbnails and stuff. You're like, which spelling? I'm like, I don't know.
All the downloads, which I think they're all still in the Facebook group, and I think they're in the first few videos as well. I think we linked them there as well. But it was just all kind of my research, my initial research. So by the time we came into it, I had already done a first pass so that I could get the materials together. And the biggest thing was the spelling, and occasionally the last two runes, which I found was really interesting. It is, I have to look here. Hagalaz and Thurisas.
Yeah.
So depending on which resource you were looking at, they would have different positions. So it took me some time to kind of figure out, where do I see them?
Yeah.
And so in some resources, they have Athala first and then Daga second, which is like how Nina does it. And then in several of the resources, they had swapped them. I don't know that it has any significance because they're not numbered.
No, that's a good point. They're numbered in like Nina's rune deck, obviously, but like,
that's why you can find them in the guidebook properly.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, I don't know that it has a significance, but it was a really interesting exploration to think about where I would put that order. And I don't know that I have a fixed opinion about it. I think it kind of fluctuates a bit because you can make a case for either, which I think is the thing. But I like the idea that there's a book. The one thing I really like about that is I definitely found it useful in the beginning. I had 2 or 3 different resources I would go to read about the meanings of the runes. And that comparison piece was useful because there was wildly conflicting meanings for quite a few of the runes. And so it gave me an opportunity, as frustrating as that kind of was on one level, it also gave me an opportunity to think about what made sense to me and like what resonated, and kind of land where I was going to land about what I thought it was going to mean. But having a book that references multiple other opinions, but having it all in one book would have been a lot more convenient, because for a bit there I was carting around with me like 4 books. Just so I could like look them up with my daily draws or when we were studying it that day or that week or whatever. And yeah, it was a lot. It was overwhelming. I think starting with one really good comprehensive book would have felt a lot less frustrating for me, for sure.
And this wasn't even, I think when I originally set up the materials, I was using the other Nordic rune book that I have, which has pretty much, since I've gotten and started reading Taking Up the Runes, it's gone on the shelf and I haven't touched it since.
That's
interesting. The Taking Up the Runes and then Nina's Rune Spiral guidebooks, those are it. That's all I've really needed. It goes into so much between the two of those that I felt like that was really all that I needed.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you, was there one thing that like kind of surprised you in your whole learning of the runes? So like, I'll kind of give an example because it keeps coming to mind for me. So in the Norse myth, not really mythology, but kind of culture, they see the divine feminine and the divine masculine as opposite, as I've been taught. And that was super hard for me to get over, and which totally makes sense. But they see the masculine as associated with water and the moon, and the feminine as associated with sun and totally just blanked there.
Divine masculine, right? Or divine feminine, I mean.
Divine feminine, yes.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of one of the most, I think, surprising things, and that I kind of had to rearrange in my brain whenever those cards would come up, because there are runes. There are runes associated with those two sort of elements, the water and the sun. And so that was really interesting for me to look at it and to try and swap that in my brain and to look at it from that different perspective, because that's totally opposite from how my training and my personal practice is.
Yeah, I actually really struggled with that. I found myself doing better to just, I found myself doing better to not concentrate too much on the fact that men were associated, or that divine masculine being associated with like that moon or lunar or more softer energy in a way. And I had a hard time actually making the swap. And so I found it actually more of a distraction than anything, in a weird way. Like it's valid and it was a big part of it. But I would find a way, how do I express this right? Like I would find a way in my brain to kind of twist it up so that it would make sense to me. Does that make sense? Like, okay, Lagus had masculine energy, which was a huge shock because I'd been pulling Lagus as a daily draw for a year. Like, you know, it never would have occurred to me to associate that with masculine energy. But of course, like even the shape of the rune, like everything, it starts to make a lot of sense when you dive into it. But I had to, in my brain, figure out a way besides going water is more masculine. I had to make other connections. I don't know. I'm terrible at explaining it, but like I had to somehow bridge that gap for myself, right? Oh, hi, Kay. Yeah. So it just, it was a trip. It was a trip for sure.
That one, I think, it was surprising to me, really interesting, and I found it very, very fascinating because it totally tracks, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of really wanted to work with that in terms of seeing it from that different perspective, but I definitely struggled with that. But I can tell you the two hardest that I had the most trouble with were, Awaz and Radio. Those two I kept mixing up because they're both like the horse and the rider, and oh my goodness, I'm totally blanking. They both have that sort of same kind of energy. Oh yeah, so Radio's like journeying and riding, and then Awaz is the horse, right? The horse and rider.
Yeah, and it's interesting. That was a trip. I think
I struggled with those.
Yeah, those, because they feel like they're both about forward movement and like direction and all this kind of stuff. I think for me, where I ended up landing, I don't know if we talked about this before, but I think where I ended up landing with those two was, to me, Chariot was focused more on the charioteer and their forward driving momentum than on who was pulling the chariot, so to speak. Whereas I feel like with Awaz, it was more about that, to me, where I guess I landed is the bond between the human and the horse, right? That sort of feeling of like, who can you rely on and who can you lean on to help you go forward? And like, how can you, like, who do you really trust? Like, who's in your, what's the word I'm looking for? Like your ride or die. That's what it feels like. Like the Awaz is about your ride or die. And that could be you, or it could be somebody you rely on, or it could be an energy you rely on, or whatever. But I feel like it's more about that, like, that connection. Oh, did I talk about the geeky avatar reference?
Yes. I think we did in wrapping
it up or whatever, that AIT. Yeah. So to me, it's totally that Sowulo, the bond that they talk about in Avatar. And once I made that connection, I was good. I was like, okay, I'm good with Awas. But like, yeah,
that actually really helped, because I was just, and I still flip flop them sometimes. I'm like, oh wait, I have to, no. And I guess it's because they both have that, the same kind of
feel.
Yeah, sort of a real similar feel. I see it as one as being the journey, and one as being that connection on the journey. So they're kind of two different things, but those two, man, I struggled with. I kept flip-flopping those around, and it took me quite a while, and I still pull runes out and go, oh my goodness, which one is this?
Yeah, you know what? There's a couple of runes that are like that. So there's Uruz, which is the wild ox, and there's Fehu, which is cattle. Right? So there's that. And then the ones that I probably struggle the most with sort of which is which kind of thing are actually Hagalaz and Thurisas, because they're both kind of like stormy and like upheaval-y. So I struggled a bit more with these, where I feel like Hagalaz kind of happens to you, and like Thurisas you kind of are an active participant in a way. But like I still struggle with these two being kind of close to each other. You know, and I feel like there's a few places with only 24 runes, like, do they have to be so close? Like, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no. Some of them, I felt like it took me a while to kind of put them in their own sort of distinct category, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like, and then you get into like you have the ice and the hail.
Yeah.
It's like, they're on first glance, it's like, well, that's kind of the same thing. Or there's the other one, Algies, and I'm trying to think.
Is it the protective ones, right?
The protective one. I feel like that was, I'm trying to just real quick flip through.
I know I'm looking too. I'm like, what was the other one that had that feel? It wasn't Ingus, was it?
Maybe it was. There's just a couple of them that felt like they had similar.
Oh, Iwas. I bet you it was Iwas. Iwas has that sort of divine protection. So does Algies, maybe? No, maybe I'm getting it mixed up now.
I know.
So not helpful.
I think it was Ingus and Burkana. Because both have kind of that nurturing thing going on. But as I dug into it more, I found that one actually has kind of more of a feminine connotation, and one had more of a masculine, as I saw in the resources that I was reading. So,
and they were both like they were both that nurturing kind of energy, right?
Right. So like for me, it's like they both kind of tie into like that Empress energy, going back to that the tarot associations. And so some of them were kind of just, it took me a while to kind of distinguish them in their own right?
Yeah.
Not to blur them together.
That's the thing I struggled with too, was a bit of that blurring. So Anne asks, are the ets important to the meaning of each rune? I don't know. I would say yes and no. Like, I think it was helpful to see how they were grouped and to feel that progression. And there's certain, like, for sure, the first et feels very day to day. The second et felt very like growth and conflict kind of oriented in a way. And then the third et felt very like spiritual. So you could see, just like with the tarot septenaries, you can see a progression, which I think is helpful when you're studying them and trying to understand them. But I don't know that it's strictly necessary to each individual rune's meaning. Does that make sense? Like, I feel like you could regroup them potentially and still have good meanings.
Yeah. I think you totally could. They relate to each et relates to a deity. If I could remember, I should have pulled out my the guide, because I actually wrote it in there. But and I think it's helpful to kind of know, okay, who it is. So the first et is ruled by Frey and Freya, and to kind of know who they are and what they are about does kind of, I think, help to kind of give you that overall idea of what's kind of encompassed in that grouping. But I don't know that it's that it's necessary. And like the second is ruled by Heimdall and the third by Tyr. So
yeah,
I think you can definitely kind of see that, but I think it's more of a just kind of a way to kind of group and make sense of them all.
Yeah.
But
kind of like
that was the other thing. So as the ceiling pointed out, Hagel versus Heimdall. So in some books it's Heimdall, some which I'm probably pronouncing wrong, and in some it's Hagel.
Hagel, yeah.
So there was some of that too. Just in the overall ayats are definitely different in some different places, but I think it's a convenient way to group them when you're learning.
Yeah.
I found that helpful. I don't know that it necessarily has any real relation when you're actually working with the runes.
When you're like reading them, you're not, at least for me, when I'm reading them, I'm not, when I pull a rune, I'm not thinking which ad is it, but it was helpful, like I said, for story and for progression to some degree. I think I was thinking about like, and I'd be curious for you what it was. Is there a single rune because you did your first pass as you were prepping material. So when you started diving in, was there a rune that like surprised you the most about what it meant? And we may have talked about this before, but I can't remember what you would have said before. So I'm going to ask it again.
I feel like there was. Let me just see.
Okay, well, you're flipping. I'll talk about mine.
Flip through. Yeah, talk about yours because mine was a while ago. I have to think.
So this one, so this is one of them, Taiwas. To me, when I had been doing rune draws and stuff, this was just like, oh, masculine energy, like potency, things like that. But once I read Neil Gaiman's Norse mythology and I read the story about the wolf and what Tyr had done, because this is the beginning of Tyr's et, and this is a Tyr rune, right? He put his hand, there was this like, I'm going to tell this bad, Fenrir, the wolf? Yeah. Yeah, something like that. And they had bound him. They basically tricked him and they wanted to bind him and he knew he was being tricked. So he said, well, I'm not going to do it. And Tyr put his hand in there and said, if we're lying, then you can basically bite off my hand. But the potent moment of the story for me was that Fenrir, yeah. So when when the wolf realized that it had been tricked, there was this moment, at least as Neil Gaiman tells the story, where Tyr basically looks at Fenrir, is like, go for it. Like, this is what we agreed on. And so he bit his hand off. And, oh, I see. Fenris and Fenrir are both right. Okay.
I think I've seen it both ways.
Yeah. So ever since reading that story and making that specific connection, this feels a lot more to me about honor and about like upholding your oaths and like speaking truth and like, so there was because there's a lot to that story that you can't encapsulate in just a single keyword, right? And I think that's the thing I started to learn working through runes in general is like as much as I was like single keyword associations for a lot of them, I found the more that I understood the stories or the mythologies associated with them, you start to realize like you can't take that idea and distill it down as easily to a single keyword. So that was the one that I think I got the most kind of big changeover in. Yeah, so I don't know. That was one of them for me.
I think
now you're on the spot.
I think for me there were. I had the same experience in that after reading the Norse mythology book, because I read the Norse mythology book, then I read the new rune book, so the original Nordic rune book,
right?
And then I read Nina's book,
yeah,
and having that understanding of the story behind the card, and in particular whichever character that it was related to, definitely really helped. The one that I think kind of surprised me, or that my interpretations kind of changed a lot, was Anzus, the Odin's card.
Oh yeah.
So that one, when I went into it, I kind of had a different idea about, I kind of just pigeonholed it into communication.
Yeah.
But as I did more research and as I did, working with it, I kind of found that it really kind of evolved into more of a, almost like it had more of a spiritual connotation. Yes. As I went through it, and really that connection with Odin and Odin's breath, as giving speech to the world and bringing poetry. And there's this whole creative level to it as well.
Yeah.
I really just, when I started, had pigeonholed it into like, oh, it's communication.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It's like you have this like kind of idea, like, or a keyword or something. You're like, this is what this rune means. But then you start to realize it's like an unfolding, right? Like we're an onion where there's just layer and then layer and then layer and then layer. And it's neat because it does give you a lot of room to interpret when you pull a rune or you cast runes to go, okay, is this, and also depending on the kind of question. And I feel like the runes have been doing better in my own practice with more of that spiritual type of question or reading than more mundane kind of readings. It's almost like the mundane readings, it feels like it's talking over my head. Whereas if I ask a spiritual question, I feel like I'm going to get a spiritual answer with this system, right? And I will say, funny enough, as much as I love using the cards for study and for reference, I don't find myself wanting to use them to read with. And I think it's because I want that, if I'm going to use the runes, I want that like physical,
I do the exact same thing.
But I love having them and I love being able to flip through them. And it's also, I'd say it would be a helpful practice if you're learning the runes to have something like this that's in order, so that when you pull your runes, you can like lay these around where the runes are and like look at them visually and have that visual reference, particularly if you're coming from a system like tarot or oracle cards, because then you can you see the runes cast on the table and then you have all of these next to them so that you can kind of see what energies are at play in a more visual way. Speaking of casting, what about direction and things like that? Did you find yourself doing any of that stuff?
I did not really get into any of that too much, just because I felt like every time I would cast the runes, it was like you were talking about, I felt like it was really big energies that I was working with. I really I've struggled. As much as I can see the mundane connections, I really struggle with making those. It felt like every time I cast runes on the table, it's talking about the really big stuff, the really big, deep spiritual stuff. And so I don't think I got too far past just that, trying to dive into that, to even look at like direction or what's touching what. I forget what they call that. There's a name for that.
There is?
Yeah, I found it in one of the books. I don't know. I should have like highlighted it or marked it. I probably have it highlighted in a book.
You probably do. Yeah, I know you.
In some book somewhere. I'll see if I can find it and maybe post it in the group later on. But I found somebody had given it a name.
I call it clumping. That's clumping, piling, or grouping.
Yeah.
I love that there's a name for it though, and now I really want to know what the name is.
And it could just be that that particular author, it might be in taking up the runes. It wouldn't surprise me, but I do have other rune references that I'll see if I can find it. It may just be that author's particular name for it, but still, it made sense to me at the time. But I didn't really get into that too much, just because I was almost overwhelmed by. I wasn't expecting. Here's the thing. When we went into this, I wasn't expecting this little bag to be full of such big ideas and such really deep, layered kind of. For me, it was a very spiritual, like you said. It's very. Every time I threw down runes, it was a very spiritual reading and experience. That was the biggest surprise for me. Was I didn't expect that, and so I kind of feel like I took a step back and went, okay, I have to readjust my expectations now, because I've gone into this thinking it's going to be one thing and it's turned out to be something different for me. I'd be curious to know what everybody else, like, do you use it for mundane? Maybe
how do you
comments, or, did you have the other people in the group? Maybe I'll try to remember to ask it in the group too. If you had, like, was it spiritual every time? So I feel like they kicked my butt every time.
Yeah. Big, profound readings. And when I took the time to like do a spread or a casting and actually journal about it, I was writing, which doesn't happen to me with tarot the same way.
Right.
I'd also be curious to know from either people watching now or back later or in the group or whatever. I'd be curious to know if anybody else hit a wall, because I feel like you and I both hit a wall. I hit a major wall right around the casting time where I was like, my brain felt too full. And like we took quite a break from like trying to like move forward in any way, because we were both like, you know what I mean? It just felt like so much. And I haven't experienced that with other divination studies before, where I just felt like I almost literally needed time to just marinate in what I had already taken in. That was intense. I wasn't expecting that, but I definitely hit like a major, like just slammed right into a brick wall. I was like trucking along. I was good. And then suddenly like, boom, what now? Okay, overwhelmed.
Yep, I felt the same way. And I had gone through it twice at that point. And I was just like, I got to the point where I'm like, I feel like I'm not actually absorbing the information.
Yep.
I'm just running through it, and like I needed time. I'm glad we took that break, because I think that was hugely beneficial to be able to just kind of take that breath and go back and kind of look at things again. And what I did during that time was I looked at my own notes, I referred to the books, but then I was also looking at what other people were posting in the group. And there are some nuggets in that group.
There are lots of great nuggets in that group. And we have people in there that are sharing, like, and even as new people join, which is so great, right? Like as new people join, they start going through the units and adding their thoughts to each rune and what their aha moments were and what their like epiphanies are. And it's really cool to see, because every single time I read a new one of those, like I pick up a new little piece of information, like a nugget, like you said, like a new little piece of information that's just like, oh, cool. And I think that's also part of where my overwhelm came from, actually, because I felt like I'm never going to be done. And it's funny because I feel that way with tarot too, but maybe because I've been doing it so long, I'm used to taking sips of knowledge over time. Whereas because this was all a new system, it felt like I was being handed like, here's a gallon of information. Here's another gallon. Here's another gallon. Good luck holding it all. Whereas with tarot, I feel like I've been taking it in over a much longer period of time, so less overwhelming. So I think that's a big part of it. But it's neat to see the layers keep rolling in and other people's perspectives keep rolling in. Yeah, Cillian says, I use them for both. I do daily where should my attention go pulls, which tend to be mundane, but I also do big spreads where it's something I need to explore in depth. And Pixie says, it was a lot. I took quite a few breaks in between because I didn't feel I was processing. Yeah, I don't think we were alone in that.
That was pretty common.
Yeah.
There's a lot in these little runes.
It is a bunch. Yeah, studying in chunks, Cecilian says. Find a new source, read it, play with the new information, then let it sit. Yep.
That's pretty much what I did too.
Yep. Gayla, I use them almost exclusively in more spiritual readings. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. Their messages feel too monumental for easy, quick pulls in the morning. I need to be in the right headspace for them. I feel like I flip-flop, right? Like if I'm going to sit down and do runes, it's spiritual. If I'm incorporating them, then I kind of am able to take little sips off the top. But it's the in-between space I don't seem to be able to do. And I think that in-between space is kind of where casting lives, which is why I'm struggling more with casting. I did see a really cool thing in the group. So someone in the group, I can't remember the name, had made themselves, I think, rune staves. So instead of round runes like this, had like almost OM-shaped or stick-shaped runes that they'd carved into or burnt or something. I can't remember. And what's neat about that is that, maybe we talked about this before, I can't remember, but they would cast those. And because they're sticks, essentially, or staves, casting those meant that how they fell could also form rune shapes. So they were able to read not only the individual runes and how they clumped together or whatever, but they were also able to read if they saw manas or ansus or something in the way that they fell, which I thought was so freaking cool and added a whole new layer, which I am so not about trying to add right now, but it was really cool to like see and learn about. Have you seen anybody else doing like cool stuff like that in the group that like just you're like, whoa?
I think I've seen a couple people that posted like where they've seen like runes in real life. So like natural occurring rune shapes in like, you know, sticks on the ground, or I think it was in our group, but it might have been somewhere else, was like leaves. So vines had made one of the rune shapes. And so after seeing that, I was kind of, you know, as well, then COVID, but so it wasn't out as much, but as you know, as I was out, like go through, you know, take the dogs for walks in the neighborhood, like I would kind of be like looking for those things, like where those rune symbols would kind of appear in real life. And I think that's a great practice too. I mean, I guess I do the same thing with tarot, right? I'm always associating tarot association, tarot things. I'm like, ooh, that was a super like power moment, or you know, that was a chariot moment or whatever.
Totally.
So I think being able to see it in real life is really cool. I think one of the coolest things in the group is seeing people actually make runes, and all the different creative ways that people have come up with, from cards to actual like things to cast. I still want to do that.
Yep.
That's like on my list, because I want to do it from my area.
Yeah.
Which would be really cool. But I love the idea of the group just dynamic, because I feel like now that we've kind of learned it, I feel like I can settle into it a little bit and like actually start using it. Because I still feel like I haven't really incorporated it into my practice. And that's kind of where I'm at. And I was thinking back to like, so when I first started tarot, right? It's my tarot practice many decades ago does not look anything like it does now, right?
Exactly.
It's evolved, and it's become an integral part of my life. That's just a natural part of it. And I feel like I will get to that point with runes, but I'm trying to remember that with tarot, it was the same thing. It really was. I had I would hit the same roadblocks, hit the same struggles, you know. It's just been a long time since I've done anything that's really kind of almost, in a sense, kind of challenged my preconceived notions as well, because the runes definitely took me by surprise.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. It's like we forget, especially if you've been using tarot for a long, long time, you forget. Like you felt exactly the same way when you were learning tarot and trying to figure it out and figure out how to integrate it. And yeah, my tarot practice today looks nothing like it did when I was 19, but it's there, right? Like, and it's so, whereas maybe now it's so integrated, like you said, into my life. Whereas when I was first starting, it was something I would consciously sit down and do and study and learn and practice. And, you know, that's where we're at with runes. It'll be interesting to me to see, like, 10 years from now, are runes a critical part of my practice, or was this something that I learned and moved on from? And I don't really know where it's going to land yet, but I enjoy the layer. I enjoy playing with it. And I find that it's just like with tarot, you know how they say, like, you know, do daily draws and journal about them, do 3-card spreads. I feel like the small ways that I'm integrating runes into my practice is helping to slowly integrate the information, or like the knowledge about them, like integrating them into my client readings and doing these other things so that I can like get more and more comfortable with the ways those energies show up, because I need that like little digestible regular practice before I think it's going to really sink in.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much where I'm at too. It's like, I feel like I have a good base now though.
Yes.
I really do feel like I have a good base, and I feel like it's something that I can start you know, intentionally incorporating, because like any new thing I do, it has to be intentional first of all, because I have to actually decide I'm going to incorporate this.
Yeah.
And then it becomes, you know, we'll see, I guess, like you said, in 10 years, if it becomes just a natural part of my practice and something that I go for. I do like that it has a different tactile experience than tarot does, because I kind of like that blending of them together. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I do too. Painted Owl, the most helpful for me, I think, is using the runes as sigils. And when you want to do a magical practice, look for a rune that fits. I found this really helpful too. And I think this is why I'm really intrigued by that book, Taking Up the Runes, because it dives into this aspect, which, to be fair, I haven't played with that much yet. And I think it's that lack of confidence about how to use them magically, because I also have a deep respect for the system. It feels like something I don't know how to say this right. It feels like something I don't want to fool around with. Like I want to be really, really mindful and thoughtful about it, you know?
Yeah, that's something I'm definitely looking forward to, is incorporating them into some of my more magical practices in a very intentional way. But yeah, I felt the same. Like I needed to know what I was doing first.
Yeah. Like I felt like it literally, I almost give this, I'm just going to give this example because it's totally what popped into my head, but it's like when I was like a teenager and my mom was like, Ouija boards are dangerous. You don't mess with that if you don't understand it. And like all this, it feels like that. Like, I don't know why, because I didn't feel that way about tarot, but I have deep respect for both systems, but there's something about the runes to me that feels like I'm tapping into something that I need to understand if I'm going to use it magically. So I'm just barely starting to like barely dabble, and that's mostly only because I have a pendant that I got from the Witch's Bounty like last year, the year before, that has AWAs on it, and so I've used that magically a couple of times, and it felt like so sacred. I don't know. I am definitely a little bit intimidated by that bit, but I want to dip in more, and I think that book would help me a lot, actually, with the confidence.
I think for me, they feel, and maybe it's because the history, maybe it's the mythology of it, they feel more magical to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love my cards, but I use my cards from every end of the spectrum, to the super, super mundane, to the highly, highly magical, and everything in between. Whereas the runes, I feel like there's like almost this universal or kind of cosmic ancestral connection to them that I feel like almost needs to be respected.
Yes, they feel heavier, weightier.
It does. It feels weightier, and it's funny because they physically feel weightier, right? Which I think in my brain ties back into that. Like I pick these up and I feel like there's weight to them. I mean, a tarot deck has weight too, but it feels more ancestral. It feels more magical in that sense. But like I said, I mean, I totally use my cards for magic stuff too, but yeah, they're just, there's a history and a lineage there that I feel like needs to be respected.
Yeah, I agree totally. I agree totally. And I think it's funny because when I look at them, one of the things that always stands out to me in a really somewhat subliminal kind of way, but I definitely notice it regularly, is that all of the runes were made with straight lines. And that seems like such a simple thing, but it also it reminds me every time I look at them, like a rune like this could have curves in it, like in our modern way of writing. And it just reminds me that these were symbols that were carved into stone with chisels and with straight tools. And there's something about that straight line type of writing that reminds me that that's how far this goes back, is curved lines in stone or in wood would have been really, really hard to do. And that maybe seems silly, but like it's that constantly is a reminder of how old this system is. And really, when we think about it, tarot is so much younger by comparison of a system, right? Like, so when it comes to divination, like this does feel like weighted and ancient and heavier and I don't want to say more meaningful because that's not fair, but like more history rich, perhaps, in a way. I don't know how to say it properly because I deeply respect the history of tarot, but like it just goes further back, and like you can see that even in the shapes of the runes is maybe what I'm trying to say.
Acilian made a really interesting comment about it feeling, is it maybe because they feel a bit foreign? Possibly.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. It's like I want to be, respectful of where they come from, but and it definitely could be they do feel foreign in that sense. But a lot of it for me, I think personally, is just it's that history, and that it's from so long ago. It's like that tie back in, and it's just a reminder that everything is connected.
Yes.
And I think that's kind of where that sort of spiritual tie comes for me, because I can kind of in my mind a little bit imagine them carving, just and I feel like that's that sort of connection, and maybe that's where the sort of magical feeling comes from.
It's almost like we are tapping into it's kind of like we have so much broken mythologies, like broken lineages of traditions, right? Because so many traditions from this long ago were were oral traditions, right? And there's so much that gets lost in translation and then over the years that span time. And there's something about these being connected to and having survived, I guess, all of that to some degree or another. And they're still affected by the ways that oral traditions are affected. But it's like, I feel like there's this tiny little bit of unbroken history or lineage with the runes that I don't feel with other systems. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And I would imagine that OMs would probably feel similar, but
Mhm.
there's just something about that. Yeah, I don't know. I wish I could articulate it better, but I think we're both saying a lot of the same thing. We're saying we can both kind of
It's
feel
like a
that.
feeling.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like
It's
that.
hard to put into words. It feels working with the runes feels different to me than working with the tarot or
Yeah.
working with the cards, oracle. Even working with the rune cards feels different than working with the actual like physical
Totally agree.
runes.
Yep, totally agree.
Different feelings.
Yep, I don't get that same heaviness from the cards that I get, that heavy
Mhm.
weighted feeling that I get from working with runes. And I don't mean just that tangible physical weight, but like that
Mhm.
spiritual weight. Energetic weight is probably a better way to put it.
That's a good
Gala
way.
says, I think it's the fact that they're not just doodles with assigned meanings. Their whole alphabet and language is tied to culture. I agree.
Mhm.
I think there's all of this stuff that sits there that we recognize on some point, but it literally feels like we're tapping into some sort of collective unconscious or tapping into ancestry in a way, which I think is a word that you used. It feels like you're touching something that you can't usually touch with divination.
Mhm.
And I love that about them.
I do too, which is why I feel like I almost kind of reserve. They're almost on a pedestal, kind of, for me, right? Like it's got to be a special thing for me to really pull the runes out, right? And I feel that way about certain decks too when it comes to tarot.
True.
I have certain decks that I only use for certain things because they have like either a really deep, significant meaning to me, or they have the feel of like I have decks that I work with certain deities.
Yep.
That
Same.
is their deck. That's
Yep.
the only way I use it. And the runes have a little bit of that feel for me too,
Yeah.
in that the actual physical runes, and it feels different than the cards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I was just thinking when you were saying that, I was like, the Marielle Tarot is a great example of that for me. Like, it's like I can't even fathom pulling out the Marielle, for me personally, pulling out the Marielle and reading on like my week ahead.
Yeah.
But if I have a deep spiritual question about, I don't know, what's going on in the world right now and where my place in it is, I'm going to grab that deck, right? Same thing with having decks for conversation with certain deities. I have the same sort of thing going, but yeah, so it feels like there's something about these that like it feels inappropriate is I guess what I want to say. It feels inappropriate to pull out runes to do a reading on something frivolous. You know, or too frivolous by comparison to how I've got them weighted, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a little bit of that could be just the I think it is the lineage of them too, but a little bit of it could be just it's new and it's different and it's it's kind of that honeymoon phase of
Could be.
like when you still get like dressed up and when you're like in my position and you've been married for 20 plus years and you're like, yep, here's me in my everyday.
This
Right?
is
That's
what
my
you get.
relationship with tarot. Whereas
Yeah.
my relationship with runes, we're still dating. So
Yeah.
I still put my makeup on.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if I'm being honest, I think my relationship with tarot started out exactly the same way. It would feel frivolous to pull them out for just anything. So I'd pull them out for the big questions. Now it's like, I don't know, what do I want for lunch? Let's throw a couple cards down. No, it's not that bad, but it's close, right?
Yeah.
It's close. I've definitely got it very integrated into my life now in that way. So, I mean, maybe that is where the runes will end up for us. I don't know. But right now, I agree with you. They feel like more sacred in a way.
Yeah.
Which I think is neat. I hope it doesn't prevent me from that's the one thing I'm trying to like not let it prevent me from using them often enough so that the knowledge that I've managed to pick up through our study gets lost. Like that's what I don't want. I feel like I've had so many cool aha moments and I don't want it to like trickle away because I don't use them frequently enough. So I'm trying to kind of find that balance right now. And I think that's going to help me in the long run. Just like, okay, you try to use them, find reasons to use them so that they stick better,
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's, well, you got to get out of the honeymoon period, I guess. And that's where I feel like I'm at. And, but like you said, I was the same way with tarot. So it's new and it's exciting. And I feel like to use them, we still have to we have to get dressed up and we have to have this whole special thing. And, but I have found that just keeping them on my desk, I will just pick it up and just like kind of give it a little shake and just draw a rune out. And So that's, I guess, me kind of trying to make that, because I do that with my cards all the time, right?
Yeah.
I've got decks that are just, they're everywhere.
I know.
Multiply like rabbits in my house.
I know.
And so I will just, same thing with a deck. I'll just pull a deck, I'll shuffle it, and I'll pull a card. I call it like a mindfulness moment. Just take a break, pull a card, see the message. I don't journal about it. I don't write it down. It's just get a message, take a break, and then move on with my day. And I've been trying to kind of integrate the runes into that a little bit to kind of get past that honeymoon. I mean, I always want to be respectful of their history and, the culture that they come from and all of that. But in order for them to be a meaningful part of my practice, I have to be able to use them. I can't be intimidated by them.
I know. Yeah. It's like, that's exactly it. It's like, how do you strike that balance? I don't mind that they feel special. And I think when it comes to like pulling, like casting or pulling out a big rune spread, which I had a lot of fun with those. I think for those things, I feel like for those things, I want them to be bigger reasons. But the integration piece, yeah, definitely. But I definitely find that like my day-to-day use of them, when I'm reaching for them, it's going to be for like a single rune at a time, typically max 3, is where my comfort zone is for like just pulling and playing and exploring. I still see myself not reaching for big castings often at all. I don't know that that's ever going to be something I do a lot of. Yeah, I don't know.
I kind of feel the same. I have, there's certain like, I feel like this would be really great for like certain practices that I have that are really meaningful, that maybe I only do once or twice a year.
Yeah.
And I feel like those bigger rune spreads, I think could be really beneficial to that, because then I could add that whole other layer to that. But yeah, other than that, like too many, and I get overwhelmed by them at this point.
True. You just gave me a really good idea, though. I think I might try this year. We'll see. I usually do one big year ahead spread for myself. I may try casting on that spread. That could be interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was
like
thinking.
Circle. That could be
cool. Like a really like the whole bag, right? The whole shebang. Just throw them all out there and see what you get.
Cards.
Or like over a grand tableau or something.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that would be really cool too. I think putting it in that bigger context will actually help me. And it might be interesting to do that for 2021 and save like a picture of that and like refer back to it and look for those layers, not just journal about it, but make sure I have an image so that I can see where those clumps are and where things were and like that kind of thing. I think that might be really cool to reflect on over the coming year and be able to sort of contemplate those bigger energies. Yeah, I think I want to do that. I think I might do that. I'll like stick it in like the cover of one of my journals or something. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Wow.
It's been any questions before we
wrap up? Yeah, let us know if you guys have any last minute like things you want to throw out there, discussion points or questions for us. This has been a really, really fun journey, and I'm so pleased that you let me come along for the ride, Dawn, because it was a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm so glad that you did. It's always more fun with a friend, right? And that's one of the things I really love about the group, is that it's just like when we very first started, it's like, okay, I know nothing about the runes, so I'm not teaching runes. Let's
be clear.
Really clear about that. I'm gonna learn. I want to learn. Who wants to learn with me? And it's been really, really fun. I love the fact that it's still like an ongoing thing, because I can dip in and out, and I think, and that's great for everybody else too, because I know we've had several people who are like, well, I can't do it right now. That's okay. We'll still be here.
Yep. And the units are still there. Like if you don't know, the Facebook group is set up so that all of the study materials are organized into units. So whenever you decide to dip in, you can just go to the units. And when you mark, if you finish a rune, like, because we went in order of the ets originally, when every time you finish a rune, you can click a little done button, and actually the group will remember where you're at in the process. So if you take 6 months off and come back, you can see which parts you finished and just kind of pick up where you left off, which is really nice. So you don't have to do it on any kind of timeline, and you can kind of follow along and do it in your own way. It's been just really fun to kind of bring, and you can definitely go back and do stuff again, go back through it. It can be a very organic process or like a really linear process. It's kind of like whatever works for you. But
everybody adds their own to it, which is kind of where I was like, that was my original thought. Like, well, this is a lot. Let's all do it together, because and it would kept, you know, because the resources that you could find for runes can be really overwhelming, and they can vary wildly.
Agreed.
So it's really interesting to see. And we have some people in the group who are super knowledgeable.
Yeah, hi, shout out to Jennifer.
Yeah. I have lots of notes from her in my journal.
I know, same. There's been a lot of stuff, and I think it's important to note that they're not just like, just to kind of make sure I've explained it properly, they're not just like posts that we've made and that's it. Like every post on every rune is actually a discussion, and everybody's been contributing to that discussion. So if you click on the Uru's rune unit, you're going to see like comments from us and comments from other people and things people learned or picked up, or how they look at that rune. And it's the same way the whole way through. So there's like a big collection of information that you can sit with and you can contribute to. And it just helps all of us continue to learn and to grow. So thank you guys who have been participating. It would not have been the same if it was just Dawn and I. I mean, it would have been fine, I guess. But like, we got so much from the group and from everybody's posts. It's been really, really great. And yeah, just the aha moments. So many of those came from the group and not from any of my books.
Yeah, there were so many times where I'd be like reading, and I'd go to the group, and then I'd read what people had written in the group, and that's where it would click for me.
Yep.
But if you take that information and you put it in regular terms,
yes.
I was like,
that's the thing. People were trying
to get it.
Yeah, into their own language. Or like, and my favorite part, my personal favorite part of those discussions on every rune were when people would say what the rune looked like to them. Like, oh, this is like, and I never realized, like, this person's like, oh, this is actually Woonjo, and it's another Woonjo, and they're facing each other. And I was like, whoa, that was for the Manas rune. Mm-hmm. Like, so things like that stuck. Or they're like, oh, this one looks like this animal, or doing this, or this is one way to look at this rune. It's a this or that. And those things are where remembering the meaning of the runes really gelled. None of the books gave me that. None of them. Mm-hmm. So having that layer was so helpful. Yeah, it's been amazing. Mm-hmm. It's been amazing. So I'm going to do a quick scroll to see if I missed any questions here. I think there's been some great feedback. Thank you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. You guys have really made it, like, I think, be what it is. Lisa and I are just here going, here. Now help us deal with this.
Yeah, exactly. Help us cope. So it's been really amazing how much you guys have contributed. Yeah, I would not have learned or had the epiphanies I had without the group. It would not have happened. Because I've looked at rune books before, y'all. I didn't get anywhere. So just so you know, it made such a difference. Tin Can Tarot says, yes, this has been a slow process that I will be studying for a while. Oh, you're welcome. It's been fun. It's been really, really fun. So thank you guys for coming along on the journey. It's been fun to have these lives. These are all, I think, I will check, but these videos, these recaps and stuff and introductions of each they should all be in a playlist on the channel if you want to come back and look later. Definitely please do contribute your thoughts in the comments below so that people who find these later can find that. If it's not already, I think it should be, but if it's not already, I will have a link to the Facebook group in the description box down below. Anybody can join at any time and jump in. It doesn't, just because we're wrapping up in a video live stream doesn't mean that it's actually wrapping up, like it's continuing.
We're just not going to be there.
About it, yeah. But yeah, oh my gosh, any last thoughts, Dawn?
No, other than I want to say thank you to everybody, because I don't even know where it all started. I was just like, I want to learn runes, but I don't want to learn it by myself.
I think that's basically where it started. I think you posted in your group and we're like, hey, does anybody want to learn the runes with me? And a bunch of people raised our hands, and
yeah, it has made having the whole group environment, and it's been a really, really great experience. And like, Lisa had mentioned, having everybody else's contributions have been huge. And I love that it's still ongoing, because I feel like the runes, just kind of like tarot. I mean, I still learn something about tarot every day. Every day I learn something. And I feel like runes are going to be the same way, and having the group, and I love that people are still participating in it, still joining. And I think I'm looking forward to kind of going back through again, and just maybe looking at how things have changed and continuing that discussion and adding there. And yeah, so I just really wanted to say thank you to everybody, because this was just me going, hey, let's learn runes.
Thank you all so much. Yeah, please do make sure that you check out the group at some point. Obviously, make sure you're subscribed to Dawn Michelle over at Boho Tarot, who started this whole journey for all of us. So thank you, Dawn, for initiating the whole thing, because I would have never dived into the runes without you starting this. So I probably just would have stayed a thing that I just dipped into now and then. But yeah, thank you guys all so much for all your contributions and all your help. And for joining us, and I'm sure that you will see us again on something at some point in the future. And I know we're like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Wink.
So take care, everybody. Please remember to like the video if you enjoyed this, subscribe if you're new here, all the good things, and we will see you in the next one. Bye, guys.